Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to begin our next panel discussion. Now, we do realize that consumers managed to embrace new ways of communicating, or for that matter, transacting over the last so many months. Similarly, the banks also need to embrace new ways of transacting. So in this session, we'll have the PSB leaders look beyond where people are working, and for that matter, reassess the roles that employees should play in your digital transformation. With that, let's get the panel discussion started, and let me bring on board our set of speakers. We will be joined by Pravin Sharma, Chief Technology Officer, Union Bank of India, Raman MK, ABM Head, Exotel, Ankur Varshney, Deputy Chief Technology Officer, IDBI Bank. We'll also be having the presence of Atul Kumar, Chief Information Officer, Canara Bank, and spearheading this fabulous panel discussion, we have with us Amit Wagh, Partner, KPMG. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned as we get all these amazing insights from our panelists. And let me hand over the proceedings to Mr. Amit Wagh. Over to you, sir.
Kavya, wonderful. Thank you so much. And good afternoon. And, since this morning, I think we've had some really good, insightful discussions. This panel is focused around public sector banks, the transformation that's happening within public sector banks. If you look at the financial services landscape, that's changed dramatically in the last 5 to 6 years. We've seen advent of fintechs. We've seen advent of challenger models. We've seen financial services, banking particularly scale up. Inclusivity has been a huge focus. Technology has been a huge focus. And, prima facie, it's been about focusing on the customer. So a lot of changes that have happened in the banking sector in the country. Public sector banks have been the center of banking, the face of banking within India. And as the sector dramatically changes, public sector banks are also part of that transformation. I do have a very esteemed panel here with me to talk about the changes that they are seeing within the organization in terms of how they're building agility into the organization. How are they making customer centricity as an ethos, which is backed by agility? How are they partnering in the new ecosystem, be it on the business side, be it on the fintech side, partnerships being very critical in terms of acquiring, servicing customers. And importantly, how are they embracing the newer technology that the sector is looking at? So public sector banks have been amidst a significant transformation in the last few years. What I would like to do is really call upon the panelists to share their opening comments, particularly in terms of their experiences of how they've seen the transformation pan out. And what really would be helpful is their experience about initiatives that have helped transform the banks that we're looking at, be it Union Bank, be it Canara Bank, be it IDBI Bank, and also broadly from the sector perspective. So with that, Pravin, if I may call upon you to share your opening comments in terms of how you see the ethos of transformation, and then we could have Ankur talk about his experience in terms of, a quick opening comment, Pravin and Ankur, could be helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Amit, and thanks a lot to the group. See, in today's world, whether you take as a public sector or the private sector. So public sector banks, specifically, if I talk about the banking industry, so they come out with a lot of legacy. And legacy, if I talk about my bank, so it goes 100 years plus. And after amalgamation, if I take all the three banks, then it is crossing 300 years. So all the two banks which has been amalgamated are also having 100 plus years of legacy. So transformation is always a challenging task, when such a huge legacy is there. But that is not the stoppage. That is not the the road barriers. Actually, it is helping the organization to come out in a larger scale, the transformation which is needed. And if you see in the past, these organizations have shown a very huge transformation. See, if I talk about the private sector banks, they have started from the scratch on the technology. But if you see the public sector banks, whether in the year 2000 or 2002, in that line, they have gone from various small transformation about the migration from TBA or ALPM to the core banking systems. And they are fit to fight with the private sector banks and matching all the requirements to the customer. Another phase which has been the transformation which was there in the year 2009-10, when the channels has got introduced, and at that time also again a lot of transformation which has happened. Now the third another transformation in the next 10 years which is coming. So if you see that this transformation, all the public sector banks, whether it's me or somebody else, are taking a huge steps in terms of making themselves meaningful for their customers. Though it is already there, but upcoming, changing themselves. So if I take my example, nowadays we are adding all the services into the omnibus kind of setup, whether it's a net banking or mobile banking. So my customer can have the similar services for both. So that kind of, and it is so quick. It is not that it is taking 6 months to 8 months for any services to be added. The fintechs which are supporting a lot of fintech collaborations which banks has done, whether you talk about the latest technologies, whether you talk about the account aggregators or the OCEN, all these things has been put in place so that it can be larger transformation can be. I will just stop here with one statement that our vision and the plan, we are targeting around 50% of the lending business through the digital channel by 2025. So that kind of transformation which we are planning.
Wonderful, Pravin. Thank you. Ankur, if we could have your opening comments.
Yeah. So good afternoon all. So as rightly mentioned by Pravin, so public sector banks. So technically, I represent IDBI Bank, which is kind of somewhere in between. So although classified as by RBI as a private sector bank, but the legacy is a kind of mix of public sector as well as private sector undertaking. So many of the points what are highlighted by Pravin are very apt. I mean, there's a lot of legacy baggage which is there. There's a lot of inertia of rest and inertia not to change. Just because it's not that not to change per se, but not to change because of the fact that banks are always under the radar of several regulatory compliance, security, and many other requirements which are more pertinent to public sector undertakings, and the 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 breadth in which we operate, or the constraints or the variety of functions that we have to serve within those constraints are kind of a new kind of challenges could be anticipated every now and then. And then to top it all, there is always a social responsibility to serve the nation and our countrymen, women, different spectrums of citizens, whether they are millennials, the Gen X, Gen Y, or they are the octogenarians of senior citizen cadre, right? So to bring all those constraints into a meaningful whole to deliver the outcome, that is kind of one of the biggest challenges what PSU banks face. And it requires not only a technology evolution or a technology adaptation, moreover it requires a cultural shift which doesn't happen overnight. It happens only when there's a right connect at all levels. There's a right stewardship which happens at the top, and at the execution, at the middle management, there is enough vision, enough conversion pipeline which is available through the execution force. So the journey has been tremendous. I represent IDBI for past 5 months, 5 or 6 months, when I joined from SBI, which is another very big entity. And many of the learnings, what I would like to bring to the table here, have I mean, it's a amalgamation of working with these two very huge, gigantic organizations, and so one thing very important is to drive the consensus, because most of the time and energy, whenever there's a new idea tossed up, so it is always welcome as a new idea, new thought process. However, when it is subjected to the meritoricity of the idea itself, then there are several checks and balances, due diligence processes, deliberations, which take a lot of energy. And most of the times what happens is the idea may be good enough, but then the cycles, right, the cycle to see the idea, the light of the day, it takes so much of a time. I am not saying time per se, but the energy or the amount of effort which goes in, kind of sometimes it becomes acts as a deterrent. So we as technology leaders have to continuously push for that, vouch for that idea, what outcomes it will bring at each level, be it the execution
Sure.
level, be it the department level, or be it the business unit level, to the organization, as well as at the macro level, so as to for the economy, right? So the learnings have been tremendous, because the scale of transformation, as rightly put by Pravin earlier, the scale of transformation or scale of impact is matchless. I mean, it's we can give any company, for that matter, in private sector, a run for their money. Not in those exact terms, but what we mean is the impact what we create is humongous, and there are several opportunities to it. So if it takes some additional time and effort to get the idea from a ideation stage to the delivery stage, that is because of the fact that there are so many checks and balances in PSU organizations, that we have to endure that patience. But the outcome, I can vouch for it, the outcome is tremendous because of the outreach that these public sector
Sure.
giants have. Yeah.
No, Ankur, wonderful. Thank you so much. I think both Pravin and Ankur, very interesting perspective here. Raman, if I may bring you in, right, and just wanted to get your perspective here. So obviously, banking, as we heard from Pravin and Ankur, has changed dramatically, right? And there have been drivers inside as well as outside the banking sector, which have created that change or the need for change, or have been drivers of change. When you look at and your perspective here, and when you look at the fintechs, how do you see your relationship with the banking sector? And I'll go the other way around and get thoughts from Pravin and Ankur also. How do they view fintechs and technology partners? In terms of do we perceive that as a threat, or is it an opportunity to collaborate? But Raman, first your thoughts, and then I'll get perspective from the other side as well.
Definitely. Firstly, I'm honored to be talking amongst this esteemed panel. Thank you so much. I think both Mr. Pravin and Mr. Ankur spoke in detail about how the transformation is going on in the PSU segment, right? In fact, there's a lot that's been happening in the public sector space. In fact, in the last 4 years or so, I think 4 to 5 years, I think there's a lot of consolidation and privatization that's happened. In fact, if I remember it right, I think there were about 27 PSUs back in 2017, if I'm not wrong, which is come down to almost 12 right now, right? And that shows the amount of consolidation that's happened in this industry, right? And that itself can give you an idea of how big the transformation is going to be, right? So like even a small change, like Mr. Ankur was saying, from ideation to implementation stage, the time might take some time, the entire process might take some time, but the impact is huge, right? Because these are multiple legacies companies coming together, but the impact is just humongous. I have a personal experience of working with some of these legacy companies from a technology implementation point of view, and I've seen this firsthand, right? So that is the kind of transformation that we're looking at when we come to these segments. Again, most of these changes are happening, of course, it's also government strategy to strengthen the balance sheet and also to generate more potential investors, definitely. Along with that, I think PSUs also face a lot of competition from the private peers, of course, and not just from the private peers, but also from, say, small finance banks, fintechs, and etc. They do face some competition, but I think the way forward is to work hand in hand, right? So I think that's what we'll be talking about in the further space as well. In fact, there has been a notion that public sector's banks have lagged when it comes to technology adoption per se. But again, the reason for that is that these are legacy companies, right? And bringing them together and making any small change takes time. But we'll have to look at on the bright side, the impact is just huge, right? In fact, like most of the experts believe like PSBs are actually gearing up. In fact, like we heard the other two panelists, they're actually gearing up to invest huge technology, especially when it comes to AI, blockchain, and RPA as well, right? So when it comes to using technology specifically, there are certain areas where I think we can add a lot of value, especially coming from a communication tech point of view. I think engaging and educating the customers about offerings, because a lot of existing PSU customers are actually moving, if they're moving to private banks, even though there are a lot of hidden charges and etc. Right? I think if technology can be leveraged to engage and educate the customers about this change, I think that will also bring in a lot of traction towards PSUs, right? And the second thing is, I think, using technology-enabled solution to improve the entire credit underwriting and loan disbursement process. I think this also would actually create a momentous change. Like this would shorten the entire process cycle that the other people are speaking about. And on the other hand, I think investing technology and solution to basically enable people strategy, because these are huge companies, huge, like I think the number of branches are just insane, right? I think investing technology to basically take care of people strategy and also training them using AI and trying to minimize their efforts using bots. I think those are some of the areas where technology can add a great value. I think these are my insights when it comes to this particular segment.
Raman, wonderful. Thank you so much. I think you touched upon some very vital areas, right? Particularly on the lending side. Payments is another area where we've seen massive transformation. I just wanted to get Pravin and maybe Ankur back in terms of your perspective. And when we look at fintechs, right, both from customer acquisition and inclusivity also, because inclusivity has also been a big theme that public sector banks have been driving in national interest. When we sort of look at these two themes in terms of acquiring and inclusivity, partnering with fintechs, right? How has been your experience and how has been your perspective? And I would sort of look at comments on two sides. One is obviously the business part of it, but also organizationally, right? Because it's a new channel for acquiring customers as against a traditional channel of typically a branch kind of sourcing customers, right? So how are we sort of dealing with those aspects, you know?
So thanks, Amit, again. So I will take wherein the thought is coming that the public sector banks may be lagging in terms of adopting the new technology or leveraging the technology in a larger manner. I have a difference of opinion there. Public sector banks are not lagging in adopting the technology. They are not lagging in leveraging the technology. The difference is coming in terms of marketing. The difference is coming in terms of reaching to the customer that, hey man, this is available to this organization as well. There is the difference which comes. That may not be as good as the private sector which used to be. Because I have seen multiple times and the kind of technology which is being used by the private sector, it is already there in the public sector. The name a few, RPA I'm using since 2017. But in outside, you may not be knowing that Union Bank of India is using RPA since 2017 for multiple purposes, not for one or two purposes. For backends, a lot of services has been automated. In the similar line, for the front end, now my lending, say already I have done for up to 50,000 loans, it's fully automated. So their customer need not to visit the branch. It's a fully disbursed. Till the disbursement, it is automated. So that kind of even now, for the renewal purposes in terms of the lending, I'm not going to the customer. Certain kind of loans which can be fully automated and renewed. So that kind of automation which is already there, and this is all with the help of various fintechs. Lot of data is available, lot of information is available. Collate them, and then take the suitable decision. So the data-driven decision is already implemented in the banks. The use of technology, use of information is there, and lot of that is helping because of the fintechs which are available. Whether you use in video KYC, whether you use with the connection with the NESL. See, now the digital documentation, I am already doing with 3 states. So wherever the GOI is enabling, now another 3 states are being integrated. So the kind of technology which we have and the kind of support which we are having, it's always is doable and being used. So that kind of support is there, and that kind of implementation is there. And yes, always a large scale. At the scale of the country. So when you go to the rural, I think none of the banks will be able to reach. So that kind of technology, that kind of reachability is being implemented.
Wonderful. Ankur, if I may slightly sort of extend, I think what Pravin said, and maybe your thoughts, experience here. When we sort of look at technology, right? And Raman did mention about RPA, for example, newer technologies like blockchain sort of coming in. In terms of adoption, be it in terms of improving the lending processes and thereby turnaround times, for example. I'm just taking that as one example. Or it could be to improve the way risk assessment is done based on a whole lot of data which is coming from the external ecosystem, the internal data that banks have about customers. How do we marry the data to derive insights about customer more on a ongoing basis rather than at a point of time? We've seen that adoption happening, and as Pravin said, public sector banks have been very open, right? Your perspective in terms of how this has played out in terms of improving productivity of the workforce. And you also did mention about the cultural transformation, right? So bringing that point in, how have you seen the back office sort of getting transformed to meet what's happening in the marketplace?
So if we take an example of customer onboarding, so video KYC, so maybe 2 years back, it was not pre-COVID times, it was never a talk of the town. Although it was available, the footprint was there to some extent with some of the banks, even some of the public sector banks. But the footprint, as pointed out by Pravin earlier, that the presence is there, but maybe the outreach is not told or not told explicitly. Although the systems are there, the processes are there, the necessary amount of automation is also a part of the ecosystem already there. However, thanks to COVID, it has been a blessing in disguise, although the pandemic, but the blessing in disguise is that we as a public sector bank could also encourage our not so technology driven customers also to be onboarded onto our digital channels, thanks to the very thin footfalls in the branches thanks to the pandemic and the whole scenario what happened. And of course, the banking is one of the essential, the core essential services. So nobody can provide any, whether it is a producer or the consumer part, the services are the basic necessities, right? So there has to be an exchange element which has to be there. So thanks to what the COVID taught us, and we had our own fair share of learnings as part of public sector undertakings and banks and larger ecosystem players, which have to join hands with the bank ecosystem in a nip of time, so as to reach out to the cater to the whether it is a PM cares requirement, whether it is a kind of a disbursement of a small ticket loan to the very far reaching remote areas of the country, right? Whether it is the new form of ATMs which could be kind of sailed through the boats to reach to the impacted areas, whether in a flood or whether in some pandemic conditions, right? So in a nutshell, some of the processes were already there, some are in the works. They are so Pravin made a very good point. We are not averse to experimentation,
Right.
first and foremost.
Right.
We have been partnering with, or in the kind of on the verge of starting up the partnership with several fintech players, smaller companies, startups, mid-sized companies, to try out their solutions, what value additions they can bring to the table, right? Considering of course the limitations of the legacy systems, the processes which will not change overnight, right? It will take some time while some of the processes are matured as in some of the so the fair share of learnings what COVID brought to the table is some of the processes have to be quick and fast. The turnaround time has to be reduced. We can take calculated risks. For example, RBI allowed for revocation of additional factor authentication for low ticket payments of less than or up to 200 rupees, right? So all these kind of initiatives which are being taken at the topmost level, whether it is a government or regulator or the ecosystem of the public sector players, so we are there. So one recent example is the blockchain, right? So recently there has been a lot of momentum on this digital currency, blockchain adoption. So we are a part of that ecosystem who is experimenting along with RBI and other member partner banks to work on Hyperledger or Corda or basically Billion, right? These are the frameworks for, or the platforms for blockchain which have been implemented in some other parts of the world successfully. So we are there. We in maybe coming few months or a couple of quarters, you will see or you will hear that public sector banks have covered a lot of ground, and this is one thing. Second,
I will just add to this in terms of uses of the blockchain. Public sector banks are experimenting for reconciliation with NPCI for various payment channel reconciliation, which is the core. The blockchain is being tested. We are also using for the trade finance with multiple service providers. We are also internally we are trying to put certain use cases on the blockchain. So the experimentation is very good in the public sector. The new technology adoption, that kind of things which we keep on moving.
Absolutely. No, Pravin and Ankur, thank you very much. This is very good insight, right? Raman, again, some thoughts from your side. We did speak of blockchain, some of the applications Ankur and Pravin sort of highlighted. From your perspective, as you sort of look at technology, right? Where do you see the two spots where there could be impact of technology particularly on the public sector banks. So there is, as we hear, there is fair amount of openness to adopt some of these new areas or new technologies. From your perspective, where do you see those two spots?
Definitely. I think both Ankur and Pravin spoke a lot about blockchain adoption, and they also spoke about various other technology, RPAs, process automations, and etc. Right. I want to touch upon how communication tech is actually acting. Right. So that is some part that I wanted to talk about. Where customer communication, how is this processized? How AI and technology is being used for this part. Right. In fact, specifically during the pandemic, I think it brought in a lot of changes. Like Ankur rightly mentioned, it kind of accelerated the digitization of most banks, including PSUs, right? Where most of them moved to a remote work phase. So most of these changes was brought in both the sides, that is from the bank side and from the customer side. So let me start from the bank side, right? From the bank side, I think first thing that happened was most of them enabled remote workforce, which was great. And in fact, DOT itself, the Department of Telecommunication in India itself, relaxed certain rules when it comes to IP, PST, and intermixing, where people could actually work from home to enable work from home, right? But post the pandemic, most banks wanted to retain some of this, right? Because this kind of reduced their cost on infrastructure, right? Because most traditional companies, most traditional banks had a IPPX box, like that is on-prem system to basically make calls to their customers, be it their customer support team, RM team, collection team, anyone, right? But post the pandemic, most of the banks wanted to have a hybrid platform. That is, some people could work from office using an on-prem system. Maybe some people can work remotely using their remote systems, right? So, but this came with a couple of challenges. I think one of the challenge was basically the security challenge. I think the security aspect of it. So, which was one of the major issues to start with itself. To enable a remote workforce, you need to ensure the entire communication channel is completely secure, right? And if I'm the employee working from Bangalore, and if my company, if I work for SBI, and if the server is located in Mumbai, I need to have VPN access to the Mumbai server in order to even access my systems, right? And in order to start making calls to my customers. And that has a lot of hassles and complications involved. And that is where I think a communication tech like Exotel, right, can actually play a key role. Where, in fact, recently we also acquired the ULVNO license. So that makes us one of the first, virtual telephony operator. What does this mean, right? So you don't even need, like me being an employee from Bangalore, I don't even need to establish a VPN connection, but yet I can directly use my laptop using my system, whatever CRM that my bank gives me. I can now call my customer remotely directly from the platform. One, it reduces my cost because I'm working from home, and two, it also reduces the cost on call because half the call is on the internet, right? So that is the first part of it. And the second part of it is marrying the two systems. That is both the on-prem system and the cloud system, which is work from home. It becomes very important for you to marry both the systems, because this is where the customer part comes in. You're actually talking to customers on various channels. Like Ankur rightly mentioned, you're talking to them on, say, WhatsApp, you're talking to them on SMS, you're talking to them on chat, you're talking to them on calls, you're talking to them on emails, and etc. And most banks actually work with different vendors. So they're already doing such great transformation. They're already working with all these guys. But where I feel the problem is they're working with different vendors who are kind of working in silos, right? I might be, me as a bank, I might be working with vendor A for calls, vendor B for SMS, and etc. But having a layer on top of them to extract all the relevant data of a particular customer and put it under that particular customer journey is where I think the difficulty is right now, and which is where most banks are moving towards. And that's where like a one-stack platform like Exotel actually plays a role. So imagine having just a one platform where I can give you all of these channels, and you can now track a customer journey both on a hybrid level and on a like a cloud level. So a seamless transformation between the both is what will also give a kick-ass customer experience, is what I feel. So I think that's what we're moving.
Wonderful. No, Raman, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I know we probably are going to be short of time here, but there was one aspect I just wanted to get thoughts of this panel. So account aggregators, right, is going to, in many ways, if that really picks up, right, is going to change in many ways the way we acquire, assess risk of customers, or we service customers, right? Which also means there's going to be a fair amount of data that will have to be shared as well as utilized from the external ecosystem, So when one sort of looks at account aggregators, in many ways, a step towards open banking, the associated data-related issues, I wanted to get Ankur, your thoughts first, and then Pravin's thoughts in terms of how do you see public sector banks sort of reacting to it. I think it's a step in the right direction, but wanted to get your thoughts in terms of how public sector banks are reacting and where do you see the leverage coming in,
So account aggregator as a concept is a wonderful concept. So it introduces the concept of lending at a discount and in a healthy competitive environment. So a lender, a user, from a user perspective, he may have an account in bank X, while he may have a requirement to source his, let's say, property purchase, and the bank X may be giving a competitive price. However, there could be fairer chances that a more competitive pricing may be on the table, right? So at the click of a button on through his mobile app or whatever channel is available to them, he could do all that stuff at a centralized platform which is called account aggregator framework. Now, as a concept, this is wonderful. However, the point to be highlighted here is the data externalization, which has its own set of pros and cons. And of course, banks, especially the public sector banks, are taking calculated steps towards that. So, in a nutshell, there are two use cases broadly, which is one as a financial information provider, the second wherein the bank X is the provider of users information based on his or her consent while at the time of onboarding. Second is this is the first case wherein bank. So if I am the bank, with the consent of my customer,
Correct.
I am supposed to give my information to the central platform so as to get him the right loan or loan offers, for example. Now, second pillar is the financial information user. So wherein a lot of comfort is already there with the banks. So here what happens is that if my bank is offering the customer, let's say 6% for home loan, another bank Y is offering, let's say, 5.95%, just to be pragmatic. Now the user will have all the interest to go for the other bank.
Right.
Other bank will not have any inhibitions to share the offers which are anyways already there in the public domain, right?
Correct.
So as long as FIU case is concerned, financial information user case is concerned, I have absolutely no inhibitions. I have inhibitions, and that too we are internally kind of addressing some of those concerns. So the FIP case is where what is acting as to some extent acting as a deterrent in moving forward with some of the larger public sector banks. Having said that, the work has not stopped. It is there. We are progressing. We are kind of so one important aspect is the data governance part of it. So because this entity, this kind of a platform is not maybe I'm not updated on the latest news, but government is yet to centralize that or regulate that. So there are a couple of players who are most probably they are on some cloud, right? Some public cloud. So that is the major cause of worry.
And Ankur, also I think licenses have been issued for the account aggregators, right? So, and some of them are sort of operational as well, you know.
So we will see a lot of traction over there in coming few months.
Right.
Another aspect is to cater to fill this gap. When we were at SBI, I was at SBI, so we built the digital banking platform YONO. So there were ideas wherein SBI as a larger player could offer bank as a platform. Okay.
Sure.
So that kind of a thought process is there. So definitely this account aggregator concept holds a lot of promise. In coming few months, there could be a lot of traction for both the cases, FIP as well as FIU.
Correct. So no, I think Ankur, thank you very much. Pravin, just a very quick sort of comment, and I just wanted to pick from where Ankur left. In terms of all of this, the technology, we did speak about different components of the technology, the frameworks that are happening, data. It sort of leads an opportunity to create a platform, right? I think that's where Ankur sort of left his thoughts. So just a quick comment in terms of how you see public sector, and there are some good examples, right? We've got YONO from SBI as a platform. So your perspective in terms of using technology to create platforms that would differentiate public sector banks, and be it from a customer, be it from an employee perspective,
So thanks, Amit. See, I see account aggregator or any other platform, the kind of volume and the kind of the bids which we hold as a public sector organizations, the platforms are already being created. One of the example is the PSB 59.
Correct.
So that's a platform for entire lending has already been created, and it is being used for multiple purposes. And in the similar line, if you see the OCEN which is being created under the account aggregator, it is going to give you a lot of opportunity in terms of credit. So for credit underwriting, and especially after creating a BS, the Jandhan accounts, a lot of information about the customer is available, which has been brought into the system after Jandhan. So those people's, if you want to extend certain credit, the account aggregator is going to help you. So this kind of platform is going to definitely help to the entire ecosystem of the banking.
Sure.
So whether it's an OCEN or any other technology, so that is going to help the entire ecosystem of the banking.
Wonderful. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I think this has been a very insightful conversation. I know we could have continued for some time, but like all good things, I think we are running out of time here. I did have a few questions, but we're really short of time. But this was a very interesting conversation, some really good insights in terms of how public sector banks are open to adopting technologies, newer technologies like blockchain coming in. I think the question is, as Pravin said, about marketing the adoption, taking it both to the customer as well as to the employees. And Ankur, as you rightly said, public sector banks are giving a run for the money, as far as any other bank, banks or banking sector is concerned. And I think this is, I truly believe, I think this is the right time where banking will hugely sort of create a differentiation in the economy. And I think public sector banks have played and will continue to play a very vital role. Raman did speak of consolidation, and I think that's a very important step that has happened because we've got banks at scale now, and transformation, both external and internal to the bank, have been very clear drivers to where we are. So, gentlemen, thank you very much. As I said, truly insightful, and wish we could continue, but thank you for your time, and have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thanks a lot to you, Amit, and other panel members.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks to the Times Group. Thank you very much.
Thank you all, panelists and hosts, and thanks for arranging this. Wonderful.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the ET Forum and the Times Group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you to everyone. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Amit, and thank you to all of our speakers for joining us this evening. I think we managed to gather some really important insights over here in terms of the way the entire landscape is transforming with the way how, with the kind of initiatives that were rolled out by the respective organizations or at your end. So thank you so much to all of our speakers. Thank you very much for being part of the session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, it looks like back to back, we're going ahead with these sessions. We're having some amazing stalwart speakers joining in, sharing across some very important and pertinent initiatives, or for that matter, future trends, where exactly it's the way forward, paving the way forward for that matter. And I hope you're also going ahead and tweeting that using hashtag ET Digital Banking. With that, we're also about to get started with our next session. And while we do so, stay tuned, stay with us so that we can bring on board our next keynote speaker in order to share another very, very important insight on developing a competitive edge by enabling smarter financial services. We're going to get the session started in just a couple of seconds. While we do so, go ahead and keep those tweets coming, and do take a look at the leaderboard as well.